Get your stinking rat out. It's Late Night Large.
Welcome to a late night large that doesn't know what the word beaten means. Hence why we flunked out of our souffle classes. Contaminating the broth is me, Aaron Bliss, and wearing his chef's hat on his wang is Mike Larch.
Want to see?
For the last time, Mike, no.
That's not what you said last time. So everyone out there, he's full of shit. He's lying.
All right.
And he loves my wang.
So your failed souffle attempts aside, Mike, how are we doing? How are we doing this week?
Well, yeah, the week at time of recording, the week is young, but already managing to be a pain in my ass, so that's good.
Is it not? Is it not beginning to look a bit like Christmas?
Well, I've got to say the C word.
Sorry, beginning to look a lot like Greg Ross.
If only.
That's...
Yeah, I mean, don't drop the C bomb. Yeah, don't need it.
And yeah, retail. You don't want last thing you want to hear.
Yeah, don't need that kind of negativity in my life. All right, so. But yeah, it is. You know, it's getting closer, isn't it? So.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, all right. You know, not too bad. Just keeping on. Anyway, yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm happy in the sense of I've moved to on normal years. I aim to get about 85% of my Christmas shopping done online, and obviously I've used COVID as an excuse to get 100% of it done online. So I'm pretty happy about it that way because it just Christmas shopping online sort of removes all the most undesirable elements of Christmas shopping. It just gets, and just gets right down to the root. Like, what am I looking for?
Well, that's how we like it.
I thought you'd like that, yeah.
All the way to the root.
So no, that's been going well. It's weird. It's kind of the same pattern I always follow. It starts to creep towards the end of November, and then in your head you're thinking, "Oh, better start Christmas shopping, hadn't I?" And then I'll get into the last few days of November. Oh, why haven't I started Christmas shopping yet? And you're trying to get in the zone, and in fact, it's actually been quite smooth. So I got it all, the vast majority done within a 2-week period. So now I'm really happy. So it's all up to the postman to make sure it all gets here in time. So
come on, Pat.
Yep, come on, Pat. Take some more MDMA and get your round done quicker.
Yeah.
So Christmas marches interminably closer, of course. Sorry, Mike. But what else marches interminably closer is the potential transmission of COVID, of course.
And
that's what we're
going somewhere else.
Yeah, that's what we're here to discuss with the interminable growth of COVID. Finally, we come up with a growth that Mike doesn't necessarily approve of.
It's taken years.
Yes. Scientists have been scratching around for decades trying to figure out the elusive growth that Mike Large doesn't approve of. We thought cancer might be in there, but now COVID definitely. It's impinged on Mike's leisure time and his extracurricular activities. So this is a growth that's certainly out of bounds as far as Mr. Large is concerned.
Yep. Yeah, they've found a winner there. Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
We definitely have a winner. So the main the inspiration for the title of today's show relates to a comment that I heard today from Matt Hancock, who we're always interested in hearing from. As cringy, as cringy as a lot of his interviews tend to be, but he is still the health minister, so we have to listen to what he says because we assume that he gets professional people whispering things in his ear that he's supposed to repeat to make palatable for the oi polloi like us. And what he said, I don't know if it was today being the day we recorded, was that there is apparently a new strain of COVID-19 running amok in downtown south of England. And this is the excuse, excuse me, this is the excuse that he gives for why, oh, the infection rates are going up in the south. We think this might be the reason. First of all, have you heard about this, Mike? This new strain stuff that he's been coming out with, and what's your initial thinking on it?
No, I've not heard about this. Not too much anyway on the new strain. Not really had a chance to have a. Well, I try not to listen to him, in the respect that if I don't have to hear him speak, I'd rather not. And I've not had a really chance to read anything, so I've heard about it, but I don't know the ins and outs. What's he saying then?
Okay, well, yeah, to be honest, I'd prefer not to have to listen to him, but of course, we wouldn't have anything to discuss on Late Night Large if we didn't listen to him now and again. So
We could just slag him off anyway.
we could, yes, that's true. We
Yeah.
try and at least inform as well as just rip people new arseholes. So
A little bit.
Yeah, the ratio sometimes is a little bit.
Information, arsehole ripping. I love a good bit of arsehole ripping.
No lube. So so aside from the fact that Matt Hancock is and has been for some time a giant weapon, what he said today was quite important for the south of England particularly. So he claims, presumably egged on by Valence, Whitty, whoever else, that there is a new strain of COVID-19 roaming around the southern regions of England. Of course, it's England. You know, they say the UK, they mean England, as in, you know, the affluent Tory shires. Now, my immediate thought was, oh, hang on, here we go. You know, what the hell is this going to mean? You know, we've had the good news, the inverted commas good news of the vaccines, which, you know, we're about to shoot our own feet off in kind of providing obstacles to getting them into the country. And also, that's already going to take quite a few months to get through the population. But we've got a light at the end of the tunnel. And then he says, and he comes out with this, there's a new strain. So I delved into it a little bit. And the reason I don't think it's been broadcast quite as widely, because I think I only really noticed it in The Guardian. I'm not sure it was initially headline news. And I don't think it's been on all the broadcast news. So presumably it was more information rather than a game-changing announcement. So reading into it, there's a new strain, but they were quick to say, oh, but there's potentially up to 1,000 new strains we've noticed. So I was like, oh, okay, so this isn't something we have to worry about, right? And Hancock then went on to say, we do not believe that there's no reason to believe this will make people sicker, as in it's not a more deadly form of COVID. And he also, at the moment, the medical professionals do not believe, or the epidemiologists, whatever, do not believe that there's any reason to think that the vaccines we currently have rolling out will not be effective against it.
Right. If that's the case,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's apparently 1,000 different strains, new strains that they know of, why report this one?
I did think that. My initial thought was it's an excuse to get away with, for instance, something we're about to talk about, why London is about to go into tier 3 because their transmission rate is out of control. So my thinking was that Matt Hancock made that a big thing to, again, just put a protective shield in front of him and his department and the government, say, no, this isn't the fact we relaxed the rules too much or anything. It's a new strain we couldn't foresee, and that's what the problem is. I'm not sure how that really relates to increased transmission, because a new strain isn't going to increase transmission, is it? I mean, I don't think that's
I don't know. It depends on the characteristics of the strain, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't seem to make that clear that was the reason. But it's one of those things where the government announces something and you think, oh, that's big news. Then I wonder if that's what. And what they do is sometimes they leave it a bit ambiguous. So basically, they don't want to be caught outright lying, particularly in front of medical professionals. So he couldn't come out and say, oh, the only reason London's so out of control is because of these new strains, because the medical professionals would have probably contradicted him and said, no, I don't think the health minister has his facts completely right there. And then he looks like a fool. Whereas what he's actually doing is kind of floating the implication that, oh, the transmission is out of control, but we've had these problems of new strains. And then, you know, people who don't know a lot about epidemiology or whatever will go, oh, okay, so it's not really the government's fault. They couldn't really foresee that, even though there's not really a direct connection between heavy transmission and a new strain. He just kind of leaves it there. That's the way I saw it. I saw it as kind of a fig leaf, again, to try and remove any blame for the government. Because, let's face it, the London situation is another example where the government seems to have taken the wrong decision, even though they were advised against it. I don't know, what do you think?
I suspect that, as much as I love to disagree with you,
I knew that was coming.
I suspect there may be some kind of truth to what you've said there. You'd hope not, wouldn't you? As in, you know, but we know, we grow full well that politicians will say what they need to say to cover their asses.
Careful use of language.
Yeah. Well, we all do it from time to time, don't we?
Definitely. I mean, in politics, it's an art form, though, isn't it? Absolute art form. Because you ultimately, the government is 99% responsible for all of these decisions. But anything that they can throw in there that kind of muddies the waters a bit, you know, stops a direct line of blame and accountability going to them, they'll throw it in. I mean, let's face it, earlier in the pandemic, they were outright lying. You know, we've got it on record that they were outright lying to the public. And, you know, sometimes they've been contradicted by their own professionals minutes later. Do you remember the time, for instance, not more than, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Matt Hancock, when he was talking about how great it was that the regulator had approved our vaccine before anyone else, he then felt the need to say that was because of Brexit. And then literally hours later, he was completely contradicted. And I think the head regulator came out and said, that's not true. It's not true at all. In fact, not only is it not true, it's the opposite of truth. The reason we were allowed to do it so quickly is because we are still in the EU scheme allowing us to do this. So maybe it was a case of that, where Matt Hancock, who, I mean, let's face it, a lot of people say that Matt Hancock looks like every time he's on TV, he looks like he's permanently in a hostage video. And then, you know, he's got a gun behind his back. He's never quite saying what he wants to say, and he always looks kind of emotional and like he's on the verge of breaking. So, you know, maybe he literally was once bitten, twice shy. He didn't want to be contradicted and look like a dick on TV again. So he was very careful, and he thought, I'm not going to outright say this. I'll just leave it in the air. So no one can contradict me, but I'll give the impression, like you've said many times, when Matt Hancock talks to the public, he's not talking to me or you. He's not talking to people with critical thinking ability and strong mental faculties. He's talking to the gormless. He's talking to the people, or not just the gormless, the people who don't pay a lot of attention to politics. You know, for whatever reason, they don't believe it applies to them. They're just watching it because they're worried. And if Matt Hancock says something that seems plausible enough to them, they'll make the connection without him having to. So that's kind of how I see it. I don't know. That's me speculating. I just think that's the most likely explanation.
Yeah, I think being as critical as you are of politicians, it would be easy to just assume that you're assuming the worst. But actually, it would make sense. It makes sense that I think there probably was a bit of that, yeah.
Yeah, we've seen past patterns of behaviour, haven't we? It seems.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you're probably onto something there, to be honest.
Oh, thank you. Uh, anyway, what we mentioned back there as well, Mike, related to Matt Hancock and what he was talking about, was obviously all connected to what's growing on in London.
Oh yeah. Ooh.
So here we go.
Not good for them.
It's not good because, I mean, don't get me wrong. I slag off London more than anyone. I think it's a filthy, overcrowded, hyper-capitalist hellhole most of the time. I know a lot of other people only look on the good side. You know, amazing nightlife. Everything that's worth seeing is in London, the West End, museums, etc., etc. So I get that. But the big thing is, it's the capital. It's where all the tourists are drawn to, particularly for Christmas shopping, Christmas shows, pantomimes, etc. And I'm sure, particularly the West End, I've seen a comment from them about this because it's now been made official. It's been announced. London will be moving into Tier 3. So they finally bitten the bullet. Again, you know, 2 weeks after everyone advised them to do it, it's now in Tier 3. So way to go. Give another 2 weeks of transmission, make sure more people catch it, and let's ruin businesses anyway. So, yeah, the brief period where London businesses, and particularly the West End, were trying to recoup their losses while still being COVID safe, have now been told that was all for nothing because the government made another boo-boo and they thought that they could try and, I don't know, salvage something of the Christmas economy. And now they've had to bite the bullet, and pubs, restaurants, whatever, have to close down. The West End have made statements that they think they're going to be ruined by this, etc., etc. Mike, quick take. Do you think it's ultimately the right decision?
I think that stats don't lie. So if they've done their statistical analysis and they've looked at the facts and the figures, and you have to assume that someone, authority on this sort of thing has made a decision. And let's not pretend it's not a big decision to make. It is, when you talk, for all the reasons you mentioned, when you talk about moving these kind of restrictions, enforcing these kinds of stricter restrictions on the capital, and all the implications that come along with that. Some of the things you mentioned. That's a huge decision, and that could affect the country's. Not only is there a large percentage of obviously the population in and around London, obviously for proportionately wise, but there's also that's where it's the center of our economy, so all sorts of implications, but it's a huge decision. So I can only assume that if they're making it, it's because their hand is absolutely forced, and therefore it must be the right thing to do. It's not like they're saying, well, let's put, and no disrespect, but let's put some poor city or poor county up north in Tier 3. Is it? We're talking about,
Yeah,
we're talking about London.
no, that's a very good point.
If they're going to actually do that to themselves, they must have felt they had no choice.
No, I think you're right, Mike. I think it's the logic you use there is completely right, which is it's the opposite to what most Conservative MPs believe. So a lot of Conservative MPs were happy to throw the North under the bus because not a lot of GDP, economic activity happens in the North compared to London and the surrounding areas of London. Now, for them to, like you say, not close down, but basically shutter most of the capital during the busiest period prior to Christmas, that is going to hammer the British economy as a whole. So that is a huge decision. And like you say, if there's any So, we talked earlier about them doing everything 2 or 3 weeks after they've been advised to urgently do it. Now, most of the time, I would say it's laziness, it's crossing their fingers, it's incompetence that causes that to happen. This time, I think genuinely, it was, we can't afford to do this. We have to keep London. We have to keep London as free as we can. We have to see this through. This is our last chance of any kind of keeping us above a disastrous kind of level of recession. And the fact that every fibre of their being says economy before people in London, particularly, must mean that the hospitals are saying we're on the brink. Like we are in red alert territory now. So I think you're right. I don't think anyone could ever accuse the government of acting too rashly in terms of the restrictions on London. I think it's quite the opposite. So, hopefully this will stop a catastrophic loss of life in London over the festive period, because ultimately, one thing that people do forget when they're talking about exercising their freedom and enjoying the Christmas period and whatever, nobody wants to spend fucking Christmas in hospital, because you're potentially going to condemn people. I'm not saying they necessarily die, but do you want to be on a ventilator in hospital over Christmas? Because ultimately, down the line, that's happening to people because of this loosening of restrictions. So I don't know. Hopefully, a few families who might have been at grave risk of not being able to see their relatives at all because they'd have been in the grave by Christmas in London might be spared that. And even though I know there's a lot of people, it's going to be hard, you're not going to get the full Christmas experience, but most of us resigned ourselves to that weeks ago. So there you go. So I think we probably agree.
That's the other thing, isn't it? The other thing, why you mention Christmas actually,
Right.
is they've come out and they've said that they're considering abolishing this 5-day do what the fuck you want. It's not do what the fuck you want, but it may as well be over Christmas. You seen that?
I did. Oh, I didn't see it got that serious that they were considering abolishing it. Go on, tell me.
But all I've seen is that I don't remember where it came from now, but effectively it appears like there's either calls for, or they are backpedaling slightly on this whole 5-day Christmas relaxing of the rules.
Right.
Now, my personal opinion is that it was fucking stupid in the first place. I think we've said before, when we mentioned it, when they first said they might do it, is how have they gone about justifying that in a, was it let people see their family over Christmas because they'll be sad if, and I'm not playing down the importance of mental health, we discussed it a lot of times, but did they ring up COVID and say, leave it out for 5 days, will you?
Leave it.
I mean, we'll get you a Christmas present. Just don't kill people and shit for 5 days, will you? You know what I mean? We've said it before.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was a particularly good idea anyway. And I think with the increase in in transmission rates, especially in certain areas of the country, we talk about London being a huge kind of area with regards to the impact it has on the rest of the country as a whole, and that's moving into tier 3, and these restrictions, these Christmas restrictions, or lifting of restrictions, or relaxing of, for those 5 days, that included tier 3. That was everything.
Yeah.
And I just think, well, and I think probably what they're looking at is going, well, hang on a minute, things are getting worse. We're talking about new strains. Things are getting worse. Transmission's going up. We're moving, more areas into harsher tiers. How can we justify doing that and then going, yeah, but don't worry about those 5 days still. That's fine. Crack on. You can't, can you?
Yeah, no, I think
So I think that's why. I think that's where the talks come from. Like I say, I'm not sure whether it was just calls from certain people to actually urge them to address it. But I'm sure they did come out and say they're actually reviewing it.
no, I think you're right. I mean, I'd seen 1 or 2 comments from medical health professionals, and I think their thinking on it, like I say, it might have developed further, like you say, but their thinking on it was they wanted. I mean, it wouldn't have been able to be a public health message, so to speak. But what they wanted was to communicate to people, we don't advise this. We're not going to say you are forbidden from doing it. And if you need to see someone because you're going to go nuts and potentially mental health breakdown, we're not going to say that's not allowed. But please consider all the risks, and if you can avoid it, don't gather at Christmas indoors. I think that's what they were trying to say. And to be honest, that would probably be the ideal message from, say, Boris Johnson, for instance, because as we know, he seems to have a childlike desire not to be seen as the Grinch, even though he's the fucking prime minister. His job is to look after the population, not to be popular. But what he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want to say, listen, everyone, I know that everyone loves Christmas and it's a release after this terrible year, but please don't visit your family across the country and don't gather indoors in large numbers. What he wants to say is, please be responsible. So he can be both the bringer of optimism and then afterwards can just say, well, we told people to be responsible and look what happened.
Two things on that. Do you not, I mean, when you're pleading to the masses for them to use their common sense in times like these, instead of saying specifically, no, you cannot, you're fighting a losing battle straight away. That is just beyond stupid to do that. But do you also then think that perhaps they may have been a little bit naive in coming out and announcing the whole 5-day relaxation thing in the first place? That far from what they didn't know what could change. No. We've seen things change daily across the country. Daily.
No, I think you're right.
What did they jump the gun a little bit there? And actually, was it a bit naive for them to? You don't want to start making promises that you can't keep.
Yeah,
and actually, that has the opposite effect of lots of the things they come out and said, and lots of the ways they've said certain things, which is kind of we discussed before, which is we kind of need to say this, but we want people to like this still, because actually, you take that away from them again. You show them the glimmer of hope, and then you rip it away. That's worse than having not said it in the first place.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Can I posit a theory about that, Mike? Again, it's a speculation, but based on past behaviour. Can I suggest that maybe this is another example of Johnson's famous ability to kick the can down the road to keep him going for another couple of weeks? Now, we've seen this time and time again with the Brexit negotiations and COVID. Johnson only seems to think what is expedient for the next 2 weeks. And then when that 2 weeks is over, he could potentially completely contradict himself. And the problem that we have, because we're, like I say, we're critical thinking people. But as we said, when you're appealing to the politically illiterate, or let's say the gormless, sometimes they don't remember what you said 2 weeks ago. Now, I completely agree. I thought it was a ridiculous scenario where you were announcing, what was it, end of November, that we were going to have a 5-day free-for-all over Christmas. What would have been a lot more sensible is said, look, it's not looking good. We're hoping to allow a small window of time to allow families to gather at Christmas. But it's up to you, the population. We
Yeah.
need you to be totally responsible. Mask up everywhere. No meeting non-household members indoors. Rule of six, etc. We will look at the transmission rates. When we get to the middle of December, we will make a decision. But this is all up to you to make this happen.
That's precisely what I would have done. If you're going to say, if you're going to dangle a carrot, there needs to that you need to make sure that there's actually, because again, it's perfect because it denies them accountability, doesn't it? So they can say, look, we wanted to do this for you. We wanted to give you this freedom. We wanted to allow you to do X, Y, and Z. But, you know, you fucked it for yourselves.
Yeah.
You know, that's, I mean, that's so perfect as a kind of a way of doing it. I'm shocked they didn't.
Yeah, I am too. It just, but Mike, do you get what I mean? That it's almost like Johnson is pathologically incapable of seeing too far ahead into the future. He's just like, how popular am I this week? Oh, well, let's just say that we can let them do some stuff at Christmas. That'll make me more popular. It's like,
I think maybe he is probably not quite to the level that you like to make out, but I see what you're saying. But what I would say is, even if he is, the people around him can't be. Not all of them. You know what I mean? Think of the advisors, especially at a time like this, that man has around him. They can't all be that short-sighted.
I mean, we've said before though, Valance and Whitty and the other people around them, like you said, they said from the announcement, they said that they advised against it, and now, like you say, they're saying, we know you're allowed to do this. We don't want to be killjoys, but please think carefully. It would be better if you didn't do this at Christmas. I mean,
see what they're doing then. If they do it that way, if that is what happens, and they do leave the 5-day period as it is, but plead to people's kind of common sense, or, I mean, you fucking find a losing battle there. But if they do it that way round, then, you know, they can still, there's still some, you know, they can pass the buck a little bit and say, you know, and not shoulder all the blame and say, well, look, we did ask you, and actually you probably didn't do that. You know, everyone didn't do it. Some of you probably did, and you know, heeded our kind of advice, but a lot of you, I don't think you did. And now look what happened. You know, it's January now, and the transmission rate's through the roof, and you know, and grandma's in hospital, isn't she? And you know, you did that. You know, not us. You know what I mean? And but what would have been better, like we said before, what would have been better way is to not allow people to fucking do stupid things, but put the, you know, responsibility for them not being allowed on them. So not say, here, do the stupid things. Oh, that was silly. Your fault though. Just say you can't do them, but that's your fault. That would be the better way to do it. That's how they should. Saying, look, you can't do that, but it's not on us. That's on you. Instead of going, you know, it's not like, you know, it's not like sometimes I guess, you know, parents might use the kind of this way of thinking to, you know, to raise their kids, let them make their own mistakes, and then, you know, that's how they'll learn. You know, oh, we told you, be careful, and look what happened. That was silly, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We're not talking about that. You are not. You can't apply that same logic to a global pandemic. You just can't. And it seems to be maybe that's what they're going for. And actually, then that's what makes people start to look at them and think, well, actually, hang on a minute. Why would you do it that way around? Why wouldn't you do the thing that we suggested, and instead you're doing this? Why would you do that? What are the ulterior motives? You can't. Not everyone in that whole, decision being part of that decision making process. All of the mouths he has in his ear at all times, and Boris himself. They can't all be that kind of naive to the strong possibility that actually it's going to fuck a lot of things up. That can't be the case. So there must be an ulterior motive. What are they trying to achieve here? Are they not happy that they've got their herd immunity yet?
Yeah.
What they want?
It's been a.
Do they think that actually shit? We're getting this fucking. We got the old Pfizer vaccine out, didn't we? Quick snap. But actually, again, we're getting through too many people here. This is our last chance to kill some people off. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that is, but you can see why when they do things like that. They're putting two and two together, and they're not coming up with 9. Do you know what I mean? It adds credence to these things that people are saying when they do silly things like that.
Yeah, no, it's been a constant source of entertainment, Mike, your conspiratorial mindset, because you're not normally conspiratorial at all.
No.
So no, it is. I see what you mean, and like you say, the herd immunity thing keeps cropping up. And one thing I was quickly going to say, Mike, was I don't know if you remember, but initially, similar to the Matt Hancock incident, Michael Gove did the same thing, where ministers, because they're treated with kid gloves by the BBC or whatever, they think they can get away with it on every outlet. So Michael Gove, for instance, and he's not the only person to do it, other ministers have done it, but Michael Gove went on Good Morning Britain the other day, and he outright denied that herd immunity had ever been suggested. And Piers Morgan was saying, no, your medical advisor literally said it's on record. And luckily, Piers Morgan does actually prepare for these things. And he, I think he even played a clip and sort of said, no, this was definitely suggested. And then you change your mind. Because Gove was flat out saying, no, herd immunity was never government policy. It was never suggested. So what they were doing was outright lying about something that was on record. They've got found out for that time and time again, Gove, Hancock, whatever. So now it seems to be they're trying to be more ambiguous now, so they don't get humiliated by them pulling up clips of them actually saying it. I mean, you could pull up a million clips of it in relation to the Brexit situation, of people saying completely contradictory things and then claiming they never said them, even though they're on tape. But in terms of what we were saying about the medical professionals, saying, listen, don't mix over Christmas. We know it's going to be really difficult, but we'd advise against it. Now, I don't know if you saw this, but they keep saying this one-liner, which is, there's no point in hugging your gran for Christmas and burying her in January. Now, I think that would be a very good public health message. Not maybe worded a bit differently to that. But imagine if you had, Mike, the old public health information films. I used to love those. Imagine a short one of those where it's Christmas time and you're going over, and then it's like, oh, I can't wait to see Granny. And then you're running up, jumping on her, and then you're dancing around to Christmas carols and stuff. And then January comes and she's flat on her back in a hospital bed with a ventilator, and everyone stood around really solemn. And then, the message comes up. It's just like, restrain yourself this Christmas. Don't come into contact with vulnerable people, because you could be saying goodbye to them in January. See them.
Yourself.
Yeah. see them next Christmas. If you want to see them next Christmas, avoid seeing them this Christmas. The vaccine is on the way. You know, I think that'd be really effective. But of course, you know, like we said, for all those reasons, it's not going to happen. Mike, another thing I was going to quickly go on to, which I initially forgot, but was a big story over the last week or so.
Go on.
Did you hear about the Kay Burley situation?
Do I hear?
About the Kay Burley situation? Sky
No.
News.
No.
Oh, you not heard about this? Oh, okay.
No. What's happened?
It was quite big news. So, you know who Kay Burley is, right?
No.
So she's a presenter on Sky News.
Yeah.
Yeah, journalist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, she's quite establishment, but she's got a bit of a reputation for asking some pretty tough questions to ministers. Like, she doesn't let them off the hook very easily.
Yeah.
She's not quite as, you know, full-throated, like not taking no for an answer as Piers Morgan. She does eventually back down, but she does a bit of research, and she at least gives some tough scrutinizing to answers.
Yeah.
So she's got a bit of a reputation. In fact, I think she was in the run-in for some awards and stuff over her COVID performance and stuff like this.
Okay.
Anyway, over the last week or so, or rather longer than that by the time this goes out, she was in the news. It was leaked on one of those stupid blogs, Guido Fawkes or something. She had gone out to celebrate her 60th birthday by taking 10 of her friends to a London restaurant, pretending that they were on different tables to get around the rule of 6, even though there's nothing that says you're allowed to go to a restaurant with 6 people from different households anyway. So she contradicted the COVID guidance not once, but I think 3 times. So first of all, she took people from outside her household in an indoor setting in a restaurant. So that was number 1. Number 2 was there were more than 6 of them as well. And number 3 is she then apparently went to someone's house with a few of them as well. So,
well, I mean,
this was, I mean, I don't know if you didn't see the fallout from it, but basically, bear in mind, she's made her reputation on lambasting ministers who contradict their own guidance on COVID. And the fact that she was arrogant enough to think that she, who is a recognizable public figure, could go out in the fucking capital, in restaurants or whatever, celebrating with her mates. And then she then tried to apologize with one of those tweets, you know, where they say, it was basically an equivalent of, I'm sorry if offense was taken. It was like, I inadvertently broke the rules. No, inadvertently means you didn't realize. You clearly
accidentally went to the restaurant, did you?
Yeah, I didn't realize there were going to be 9 of my friends there joining me. And ironically, at least two of the people with her were big presenters on Sky News as well. So anyway, what happened, the fallout from this is Adam Bolton, who apparently is the editor at large at Sky News, started sharing some angry tweets about it and saying, like, listen, I'm a huge fan of Kay Burley. She's one of the biggest reasons that Sky News is successful, but this situation is intolerable. People are questioning the integrity of our news reporting now, because obviously people were saying, hang on a minute, this woman's been talking to ministers like naughty school children when they've contradicted COVID guidance, and she's doing it herself. So, I mean, I just couldn't believe the stupidity and the arrogance that she would think that that was a clever idea. Basically, what's happened now is they've announced that she's going to be off air for 6 months. So that's her punishment. And the people who are with her have been suspended, or rather taken off air, for 3 months. So any thoughts on that, Mike? Do you think that's proportionate, or would you have done something more?
No. Do you know what? I think it's very difficult to say to someone, regardless of what their job is, that they should lose their job for not following COVID, unless
It's Dominic coming.
unless you are a government minister, or you are. I don't know. Where do you draw the line?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't.
No. I think I get what you mean. I think what you're saying is, if you are part of the team that is regulating these laws, like putting these.
It's one thing. Yeah, it's one thing to like actually write these things up and enforce them. It's another thing to be a hypocrite.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I mean, well, it's less extreme, isn't it? So as bad as it sounds, and as much of a hypocrite as clearly she's been, it's not as bad as being the person that actually fucking said, do you know what I mean? You cannot do this, but watch me do it. It's that is slightly worse than just ripping on people, and then, do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think do you know what she'd have had. I imagine she'll have some sort of fine as well to pay. I don't imagine she'll struggle to pay it, but
No.
it shouldn't be any different for her than you or I.
Yeah, I think.
So you can say, "Oh, but public figure," and well, yeah, but
I mean,
no,
that's up to their employers, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there shouldn't be anything more, external to them outside of her own employers enforced on her. And the thing is, she's got to live with that now. So, her reputation will always be sullied by that. Her integrity as next person's pants she tries to pull down on TV or whatever, they're gonna have instantly something to go back with. So that it will have a lasting effect on her.
Yeah,
I think 6 months suspension or taken off the air for 6 months. So what does that mean though?
See, I think we haven't heard the full details. Maybe Sky won't ever let the full details be known. What I suspect it is not a suspension. It's simply you are not going on air in 6 months. They will probably keep her on full pay. I'm sure she'll probably do some journalism in the background, do some donkey work rather than being on the TV. But effectively, it's you could argue it's probably a cushier version of what she was already doing. But no, I mean, I'm inclined to agree with you. I definitely don't think it's a matter for sacking someone. I think it's quite unseemly when you're cheering for someone to lose their job, unless, of course, it's Dominic Cummings, obviously. But yeah, it's no, I think you're right. I think she's a hypocrite. I think ultimately she's done more damage to her journalistic integrity than anything. And like you say, that's going to stick around. That's going to stick around like a bad smell now. 6 months, she'll think everyone will forget about it. We could be mired in Brexit crisis, whatever, by then. But when she comes back, like you say, ministers aren't going to forget that. As soon as she, even if it's nothing related to COVID, if she makes a point of, like you say, having their pants down about, oh, you said this and then you did this, and or you contravened this, and then what they'll come back with is like a, well, Kay, I'm sure you know as well as anyone how easy it is to inadvertently kind of break these rules. That's effectively what they'll have in their locker. And it's all her. It's all on her that situation has happened. Was it really worth it? Just for a 60th birthday? Just wait a year, for fuck's sake. But there you go. And finally, Mike, before we go, I just thought obviously the big news we were expecting to hear over this weekend, because we're recording this on the Monday. I'm sure it will go out a bit later. But the big weekend's news was going to be the official declaration of no deal. That has been averted temporarily, but I just thought I'd mention some of the stupider things that happened during that. We won't go into great detail, but just to let you know the kind of things we've had to put up with. So there was a last-ditch dinner, wasn't there, originally, with Boris Johnson and Ursula von der Leyen, to see if there was a political manoeuvring that could happen to allow the negotiators to go the extra mile. And insider sources, and I should say this is alleged, although a lot of people think it's a credible source, insider sources claim that Johnson basically ruined his chances of finding a way through by being arrogant, dismissive, and even insulting the French.
No.
I know, I mean, it goes against everything we know about him as a character, but yeah, apparently he, rather than being sensible and trying to offer an olive branch, he apparently kind of tried to impugn the integrity of Michel Barnier, the chief negotiator, basically saying, oh, he doesn't have the imagination to work this out. Maybe we should leave him out of the loop. To which they obviously said, yeah, that's not going to happen. And then he made a joke apparently about Barnier being French, and we and the Germans know you can't really trust the French. Now, I don't know about you, Mike, but does this sound like someone who is a diplomat or a statesman, or does it sound like a drunk after dinner speaker who's out of his depth?
I mean, if that's true, it sounds like a drunk after dinner speaker that's out of his depths. But you know,
like
we don't know.
We don't know
because of
100% whether
claims,
that
but
was the way it happened, but it
no.
definitely plugs into what we know about Johnson's character. But that was number one. And number two, which was actually the headline in some tabloid newspapers, including the Express, which, you know, I'm sure its readers would have wanked themselves into a coma reading this, was the idea that if a no-deal Brexit happens, because remember, we've thrown all kinds of threats about this no deal, because we're not actually negotiating in good faith where we're trying to avoid a no deal. It's like, oh, you're not giving us what you want, well, we're going to threaten you then, we're going to break international law. And the latest thing was, we're going to use the Royal Navy to patrol our fishing waters to make sure the French aren't poaching our fish. So literal gunboat diplomacy. A tactic so retarded that their own, I think, cabinet ministers came out and said, no, this can't happen. This is a really silly idea. We can't do this. But there you go. It was headlines in newspapers for a couple of days.
Yeah,
So
we'll show those fucking French.
I was going to say, bloody frogs.
Royal Britannia.
Royal Britannia, all right, yeah. We're gonna start a war by opening fire on wooden French fishing boats. Really clever. And of course, that's going to get everyone on our side for all those wonderful trade deals that they want to offer us. So that's the state of play in Brexit. We still don't have a confirmation about no deal. I probably implied what a disaster that's going to be on top of everything else, but we don't have the official go ahead yet. That might wait for next week. And before we go, Mike, we may have a special edition of Late Night Large we might be working on as well, that we're hoping to get out maybe before Christmas. We're not going to say any more, but do keep an eye on the YouTube channel, because we're hoping to maybe get a Christmas special done, as well as our normal take on what's happening in the UK related to COVID. So look out for that. And obviously, tell your friends. Click on that little subscribe button and the bell to tell you when our new video's out. Mike, anything to add?
What else have we got? I haven't seen anyone call out Aaron for anything recently. Well, no, that's not true, but not as much as I'd like. We've not had any personal insults. Not just, let's be mean. Let's be mean. No, of course I'm joking, but what I mean is the message is, a couple of people do let us know and interact with us, and that's always good to see. But if anyone else has different opinions, or there's anything you'd like us to discuss,
that's a good one. Yeah,
that perhaps actually you think we've missed. We've spoken about this, that, the other, but we've completely not. We've overlooked something else. If you think that's the case, tell us.
We have been
think
known
that
to do research, so yeah, if you've got something we don't know about or we've not made people aware of, drop us a line in the comments. We'll get onto it maybe if we think it's a good subject. We're at your behest if need be. Otherwise, we'll just make up our own shit on the fly.
Yeah.
And on that note, if Mike doesn't have anything to add,
No, nothing really, other than like, subscribe, interact.
yeah, send us Christmas presents. You can find our wish list on the Facebook page.
Indeed. Other than that, I think just yippee-ki-yay.
Yippee-ki-yay. Grow you next time, people.